He rejected every woman, princesses, models, even billionaires' daughters. His heart was locked behind gold gates and pain. But one poor maid, who couldn't even afford her father's medicine, broke a vase and whispered 5 words that changed everything. She didn't come for love, she came to survive. But what she found was a prince who hadn't smiled in 10 years. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who still believes in true love. Let's begin. They called him the Frozen Prince. Prince Zayn al-Rashid, the only son of the late King Karim, had everything a man could dream of. A palace with golden floors, cars that shined brighter than the sun, a private island, even a jet with his name stitched into the leather seats. And yet he was empty. For 10 long years, Zayn refused to love. He rejected every marriage proposal brought by the royal court, princesses from Europe, daughters of oil tycoons, actresses with perfect smiles. They all came with makeup and masks, and he saw right through them, because once long ago he did fall in love. Her name was Lena, she was kind, full of laughter, and made even rainy days feel like sunshine. But she was taken from him in a terrible car accident, just 1 month before he planned to propose. Zayn never recovered. He buried himself in royal duties, smiled only in front of cameras, and locked his heart so tightly, no one could reach it again. Behind palace walls, staff whispered, "The prince is handsome, but his soul is dead." Even the garden roses freeze when he walks past. He didn't care. Love to him was weakness. Emotion was dangerous. And marriage, just a business deal in disguise. He ate alone, slept alone, worked alone. Until one day, a maid arrived. Young, nervous, poor. Her name was Amira. She had no fancy name, no expensive perfume, no royal blood. Just humble eyes and a secret pain of her own. She had taken the job not because she wanted to serve, but because her father was sick and the hospital bills were rising like fire. She needed this job more than anything. The palace manager gave her a single warning. Stay out of the royal wing. If the prince sees you, he won't be kind. Amira nodded quickly, holding her cleaning tools close to her chest. She had no plans to meet the prince. She didn't want trouble, but destiny had already begun to write something else. Something powerful, something that would warm a heart colder than marble. With just one broken vase and a few soft words, Amira had never seen a place so big in her life. The palace gates were taller than any tree in her village. The floors inside were so shiny she could see her reflection as she walked. Everything around her screamed rich. Marble, gold, perfume in the air that smelled like roses and honey. But Amira felt small. Her shoes were worn out. Her black maid's uniform was too big for her tiny frame. She clutched the cleaning bucket to her chest like it was the only thing holding her together. She had arrived just before sunrise, brought in quietly through the back entrance with a group of new hires. The supervisor, a strict older woman named Madame Riama, gave them a quick tour. No smiles, no kindness, just rules. You speak only when spoken to. No questions, no delays, no contact with royal family. Do you understand? Everyone nodded. Amira did too, though her hands trembled. This was her last chance. Her father had been coughing blood for weeks. The village clinic had no more medicine. If she lost this job, there would be no treatment, no food, no future. She wasn't here to make friends or chase dreams. She was here to survive. Her job was simple: mop the East Wing floors, dust the windows, and stay invisible. And for the first few days, she did just that. No one noticed her, not the butlers, not the chefs, not even the other maids, who were too busy gossiping about the prince. Did you hear? He rejected another royal proposal yesterday. He's heartless. They say he's cursed. No woman is good enough for him. Amira stayed quiet. She had never even seen the prince. All she knew was, don't go near the West Wing. That's where he lived, his private rooms, his silence. But on the 5th day, something went wrong. Very wrong. She had just finished scrubbing the marble floor near the central hall when Madame Riama rushed up to her. "Girl, the evening staff is late. You'll deliver the towels to the West Wing spa." Amira's heart jumped. "But madam, I'm not allowed. Do you want to be fired? Take them now." Amira swallowed her fear and grabbed the towels. She walked slowly, step by step, toward the part of the palace everyone warned her about. Her palms were sweaty, her heart pounded in her ears. The hallway was so quiet she could hear her own breathing. Then she saw it, a beautiful old vase standing on a pedestal beside the hallway entrance. She stepped past it carefully, whispering a prayer not to mess anything up. But her shoelace came undone. She tripped, and before she could catch herself, crash, the vase shattered. It echoed through the marble corridor like thunder. Amira froze, her eyes widened. Her breath caught in her throat. No, 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 please God, no. She dropped to her knees, trying to gather the broken pieces with her hands, even though they cut into her skin. I'll fix it, please. Then she heard the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. She looked up and time stopped. Prince Zane. He stood at the end of the hallway in a dark navy robe, his hair slightly wet, eyes sharp and cold like ice. He said nothing. He just stared. Amira wanted to disappear. Tears welled up in her eyes. She stood up shakily and bowed deeply. Your Highness, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll work extra hours. I'll clean the palace top to bottom. Just please don't send me away. Silence. The prince's gaze moved from her face, to the blood on her hands, to the broken vase, then back again. Still, he said nothing. Then he turned and walked away. Not a word. No punishment. No shout. No forgiveness. Just silence. Amira stood frozen. She didn't know what hurt more, her bleeding hand, or the fact that she might still lose everything. But what she didn't know was that the prince had stopped behind a pillar just around the corner. He stood there, listening, watching her sob softly as she tried to fix what couldn't be fixed. And for the first time in 10 years, he felt something. The next morning, Amira walked into the laundry room expecting to be fired. She hadn't slept all night. Her hands still hurt from the cuts. Her heart felt heavy with fear, but instead of a dismissal letter, she was handed a new assignment. You'll now serve tea in the prince's private library. Every evening, Madame Riamas said coldly. Amira was confused. Was this a punishment? No maid was ever allowed near the library, especially not near the prince. But orders were orders. That evening, she walked into the quiet library with a silver tray. Her hands shook as she placed the tea on the table beside the tall window. Prince Zane sat in a leather chair, reading. He didn't look at her, didn't speak, just turned a page. She placed the tea down and bowed. Your tea, sir. Still silence. She turned to leave, but as she reached the door, she heard his voice, deep, calm. Your hands, are they better? She froze. Slowly, she turned around. He was still looking at his book, but in that moment, something inside her softened. Yes, Your Highness, thank you. She left quietly, and behind her, for the first time in years, the prince looked out the window and smiled just a little. From that night on, Amira brought tea to the prince's library every evening. She never stayed long. She'd quietly enter, place the tea, and leave. But something began to change. Prince Zane started to notice little things. How she never looked him in the eye. How her hand still carried small cuts from the vase. How she always whispered, thank you, before leaving, even when he said nothing. Then one evening it rained. Hard. Thunder shook the palace windows. Amira walked in, soaked from the short trip between buildings. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her uniform was damp, but she still placed the tray down carefully. Zane finally looked at her directly. You came through the storm just to bring me tea. She smiled shyly. It's my job, sir. He stared at her for a long moment, then asked, why didn't you run when the vase broke? She hesitated, then quietly answered, because running never fixed anything. Zane didn't reply, but after she left, he didn't drink the tea. He just stared at the spot where she stood, and whispered to himself, running never fixed anything. Later that night, the rain wouldn't stop. The palace halls were quiet. Most staff had gone to their quarters. But from his window, Prince Zane noticed something. A small figure, sitting under the garden shed roof, hugging her knees. It was Amira. She hadn't gone home. Her room in the staff quarters had flooded, and she didn't want to cause trouble, so she quietly sat outside in the rain. Zane watched her, soaked, shivering but silent. He picked up an umbrella and walked out alone. When Amira looked up and saw him standing there, she jumped to her feet, panicked. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I didn't mean to. Zane gently placed the umbrella over her. You could have told someone. She looked down, ashamed. It's okay, I've been through worse. Zane didn't know why, but those words hit him deep. He looked into her tired eyes. No gold, no perfume, no crown. Just honesty and pain. Even kings get cold sometimes. She whispered, almost like a joke. Zane smiled. A real one. For the first time in years. The next evening, something strange happened. A power outage swept through the palace. It was rare, very rare. But a sudden storm had damaged the underground line. And for the first time in years, the massive palace went dark. No lights, no air conditioning, just silence and candles. Most of the palace staff gathered in the servants' wing, lighting lamps and whispering quietly. waiting for the backup generators to come on. But Prince Zayn, he sat alone in his library. The room was completely dark, except for a single candle glowing softly on the table beside him. He stared at it, lost in thought, and without even calling for anyone, he whispered, "Bring her." The guard at the door hesitated. "Your Highness." "The maid," Zayn said, "the one who brings the tea." Minutes later, Amira stood nervously at the library door, holding 2 candles in her hands. "You called for me, sir." Zayn looked up, his face glowing slightly in the warm, flickering light. "Sit," he said gently. "No tray, no uniform, just sit." Amira hesitated, then slowly walked in and took a seat on the rug near the window. The storm outside had calmed, but inside the room something new was beginning. Zayn leaned back in his chair. "You're not afraid of me, are you?" Amira looked up. "I was at first, and now I just feel sorry." His eyebrows raised. "For me?" She nodded. "You have all this space, all this beauty, but you look lonelier than anyone I've ever met." Silence. Zayn didn't smile, he didn't blink. He just looked at her, like no one had dared speak to him like that in a long, long time. And then he spoke softly. 10 years ago, I was supposed to marry someone." Amira listened closely. Her name was Lena. She wasn't a princess. She wasn't rich, but she understood me. She didn't want the crown, she just wanted me. He paused. "I bought the ring, I planned the proposal. And then one rainy evening, she took the wrong road home." Amira's hand went to her mouth gently. Zayn's voice cracked just barely. "They said it was fast, that she didn't feel pain. But they didn't see what it did to me." The candlelight flickered gently between them. The room felt like a storybook, quiet, honest, real. Amira whispered, "That's why you never married." He nodded. "They kept sending me women, all perfect on paper, but none of them looked at me like she did. None of them saw past the title." He looked at Amira then. "Until you." Amira's breath caught. "Me? You didn't run when I was silent. You didn't try to impress me. You just showed up with tea, with pain in your eyes, and still with kindness." She looked down. "I'm just a maid." Zayn's reply was almost a whisper. "No, you're the only one who saw me as a man, not a throne." The candles burned lower. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was peaceful, safe. Amira stood slowly. "Should I go now, sir?" He didn't stop her. He just said, "Thank you for tonight." As she left, Amira touched the candle in her hands, feeling its warmth. What she didn't know was that he hadn't spoken of Lena in 10 years. And tonight, he let a stranger in. Not because he wanted to, but because, somehow, she'd already gotten in. Word spreads fast in royal halls. By morning, the whispers had begun. She spent an hour alone with the prince. A maid in the library, during a blackout. This can't be allowed. The staff looked at Amira differently now. Some with jealousy, some with disgust, some with silent warning in their eyes. Even Madame Riama, once harsh but indifferent, now eyed her like a threat. But the worst was yet to come. That evening, Zayn's stepmother, Lady Miriam, came to see him. She never visited unless it was urgent. And tonight she looked furious. "Zayn," she began sharply, "I heard what you did." Zayn sipped his tea without looking up. "What exactly did I do, Miriam?" "You spent the night talking to a servant girl. You've embarrassed this house." He said nothing. She stepped closer, voice rising. "You are a future king. You don't get to play with maids in the dark. What would your father think?" Zayn stood slowly and met her eyes. "My father would ask me one question. And what is that? Did she make you feel alive again?" Lady Miriam froze. He continued, "Because for the first time in 10 years, someone did, and it wasn't one of your precious princesses." She stared at him, stunned. "You would throw away your crown for her?" His voice was calm but final. "I already threw it away once when I lost Lena. I won't lose again." That night, Amira found a letter slipped under her door. It had no name, no signature, only 4 words. "Watch your back, Maid." She clutched it with trembling fingers, because now she knew. Someone wanted her gone, and they wouldn't wait quietly. Amira didn't sleep that night. She stared at the small note again and again. "Watch your back, Maid." Her hands shook, her heart raced. She'd come to the palace to save her father, not to get caught in royal drama. Now whispers followed her through every hallway. Other maids refused to speak to her. Doors that were once open closed when she passed. And worst of all, she feared Prince Zayn was in danger because of her. She couldn't let that happen. The next evening, Zayn waited in the library. But Amira didn't come. Not with tea, not with candles, not with her quiet smile. Just silence. He waited longer, still nothing. Worried, he called for Madame Riama. She handed him a plain envelope. She left this. Zane opened the letter slowly. Inside was one short message, written in careful, shaking handwriting. Thank you for seeing me. That was more than I ever expected. Please forget me now, before this turns into a mistake. Neither of us survives. Zane's chest tightened. He looked up sharply. Where did she go? Madame Riamash shrugged coldly. Packed her things, left an hour ago. Zane stood frozen in the center of the room. No one had ever walked away from him before. Not like this. Not after seeing him. He folded the letter gently, tucked it into his coat pocket, and whispered to himself, She ran, but this time, I won't let her go. 3 days passed. Prince Zane didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't smile. He canceled meetings, ignored calls, stopped reading the news. His world had gone quiet again, but this time it hurt more than before. Because this silence was her absence, and he couldn't live with that. He called his driver, took no guards, no royal robe, just a plain white shirt and coat. He searched through the city, marketplaces, tea stalls, the poorer districts. Hours turned into days. No one had seen her, until he drove past a dusty roadside tea stand near the edge of town. And froze. There she was, Amira, tired, pale, in the same black uniform she used to wear, now faded. She was serving cups to travelers and quietly wiping down tables. She hadn't seen him yet. Zane stepped out of the car slowly, carefully. He didn't come as a prince. He came as a man. Amira turned, and everything stopped. Her eyes widened, her hands dropped the tray. Why, your height? No, he said gently, just Zane. Tears welled up in her eyes. Why are you here? He stepped closer. Because you ran away with something that belonged to me. She looked confused. I didn't take anything. He smiled. You took my heart. Silence. Only the wind moved. He reached into his coat and pulled out a single white rose, fresh from the palace garden she used to clean. He held it out to her like a promise. Come back with me, not as a maid, as my future. She looked at the rose, at him, at the man who used to be frozen, and now stood before her, completely open. With tears falling down her cheeks, Amira whispered, Are you sure? He nodded. I've never been more sure in my life. They didn't return to the palace in a parade. There were no cameras, no royal speeches. Just two souls, finally walking side by side. Prince Zane kept his word. He didn't bring Amira back as a servant. He brought her back as his bride-to-be. At first, the royal court objected. Nobles whispered, headlines screamed. Prince chooses maid over royalty. A crown for a commoner. But Zane didn't care. He had chased riches his whole life, and none of it ever gave him peace. Amira did. So he made a decision no prince in his family had made before. A simple wedding. No diamonds, no gold, no politics. Just sunlight, flowers, and love. They married in the palace garden, the same one where he had once found her in the rain. Now the garden was blooming again, roses of every color. The same frozen space, now full of life. Amira wore a white dress made by the palace tailor, but it was simple just like her. Zane waited under the blooming arch. No crown, no throne, just a man in love. When she reached him, he whispered, You didn't just melt my heart, Amira. You brought it back to life. She smiled through tears. And you gave me a home I never thought I'd deserve. After the ceremony, they didn't throw a royal banquet. Instead, Zane took Amira's hand and led her back to the library, where it all began. The candles still flickered. The room was warm. She saw something new, a small silver plaque on the wall above her usual tea tray spot. It read, To the girl who brought light to a prince's darkest night. She touched it with shaking fingers and turned to him. You remembered. He pulled her close. How could I ever forget the moment I started breathing again? And from that day on, the palace was never silent again, because the prince who once rejected love now woke up every morning to the voice of the woman who made him whole. The palace garden was quiet that evening, not because it was empty, but because it was complete. Petals floated gently through the warm air. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting soft gold across the marble paths. The same garden where she once sat, cold and alone in the rain, was now where she stood, hand in hand with the man who once felt nothing. Amira looked up at Zane, tears in her eyes. I used to dream of escaping poverty. I never dreamed of this. He smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I used to live in a palace and still felt homeless, until you walked in with a tray of tea and lit the whole place up. They stood beneath the arch of blooming roses, not as a prince and a maid, but as two people who found healing in each other's broken pieces. Inside the palace, the library glowed gently with candles. 2 cups of tea waited on the table, and beside them, a new plaque on the wall. She didn't come to be seen, but she changed everything simply by being real. They walked toward it together, smiling softly. Not rushed, not scared, just home. They said a maid could never be loved by a prince. But love doesn't check titles, it checks hearts. If this story moved you, don't scroll past. Like the video, share it with someone who still believes in honest love, and comment below. Love is stronger than status. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove, even in a world of gold, it's kindness that shines the brightest. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.